Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. Great event, and really nice to have all family and friends joining this event. Welcome to this very important event. I'm Carlos Teixeira, the director of the PhD program at the Institute of Design at Illinois Tech. I want to welcome the participants here in the room and those that are joining us also online. The Institute of Design started the first PhD in design in the United States 32 years ago, in 1994. It's important, I'm going to mention something else here on my introduction, so just keep that in mind. 32 years that we have the program that started in 94. And it was the first in the United States to be a PhD in design. Since then, ID has pioneered design research and practice in design strategy, interaction design, systems design, and human-centered design, which are now common knowledge and practice worldwide. In the PhD program, we developed the next frontiers of design practices, and that's what we're going to have on today's presentation. Today, Salena will present the findings from her PhD research. As a tradition, PhD researchers are expected to share the original contribution they developed during their doctoral studies with society. So it's nice to have family and friends and students and many also watching us online. This event is a give back for all the support they received in their journey of developing new knowledge. Special thanks to Anidio Matthew, Zach Pino, and also Ruth Smith. Where is Ruth? Over there. And Elizabeth Hilt for your mentorship to Salena. Mentors are fundamental for attracting and nurturing the best talent in the world to work on the biggest challenge of our time. Our future depends on them and their work. Thanks, Salena, for choosing the Institute of Design for your doctoral studies. We are very honored and privileged to have you here. Speaking about our challenges, Salena will present her research findings today on designing career identity in the age of AI. You can see here on the screen. Reflective and identity-sensitive mediation for marginalized youth. Salena's contributions are timely, happening at a pivot moment when education systems are adopting new forms of intelligence, which always comes the questions, what do we do with them? Before we move forward, I'd like to pause for a moment to acknowledge the significance of this PhD defense, not only for Salena, but for the Institute of Design. As director of the PhD program, I see this as a truly special milestone. Salena is the first PhD researcher in our program to be from Chicago. While the Institute of Design has long had a strong international presence, this is the first time that someone from our own city is completing a PhD in design here, in the first program of its kind in the United States. Salena will talk for about 45 minutes, and we will take, at the end, 10 minutes for question and answers. For now, I would ask Anidio Matthew and Zach Pino, the co-advisors, to come here and make an introduction of the work of Salena.
Thank you, Carlos. Hello, everyone. Come on, let's do it. Hello. Yeah. Well, thank you, Salena, for the food. You can clearly see mine. jacket's not. My name is Inijo Matthew. I'm the Dean of the Institute of Design and a professor here. I'm also a co-advisor to Salena Burke. I wanted to welcome everybody to Salena's defense, which like Carlos said, will start in a moment with her presentation, which will be followed by an examination, and then we'll all gather back to hear the results of the examination. Before we move forward, I want to introduce Salena's co-advisor, Professor Zach Pino.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. Like Inijo said, I'm Assistant Professor Zach Pino, really honored to be Salena's co-advisor with Inijo. What a day, so great to see so many faces. PhD journey here is a long and rigorous path that we ask all of our candidates to walk. And it's a path filled with twists and turns and lots of conflicting advice, especially when you have co-advisors. And Salena's navigated all of those twists and turns so effectively in her time with us. That PhD journey also can feel a little bit invisible amongst all of the other exciting events that happen here at the Institute of Design. And so we're just so honored that we have so many guests here today to support Salena, to learn from all of her amazing research, and celebrate her as she takes these final steps today. So again, thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to hand it off to
Salena Burke is a technology entrepreneur and a social impact leader working at the intersection of design, technology, and career opportunity. She's the founder of JIL Software Solutions, a technology firm that builds digital platforms and software systems for private firms, nonprofits, and educational organizations. And also, equally exciting is she is also a founder and the president of the Jerome Burke Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to expanding educational and entrepreneurial opportunities for African American youth. If I'm not mistaken, there are people who benefit from the foundation in the audience. Yes. Is that right?
Yes.
It's great. So Carlos mentioned a first. I'm going to mention another first. Salena Burke is the first African American to do a PhD at ID. All right, if you thought that was good, she is also the first African American woman to do an PhD at ID. So in a few minutes, we will hear why this intersectionality is important to her research. I'm going to hand it over to Zach to talk about her research a little bit before we hand it over to Salena.
Thank you, Inijo. So with expertise derived from her background in computer science, Salena is arguing that it's design that can position all of today's most exciting technologies, AI and data pipelines, to support students in their career construction and exposure processes. Her research suggests that we need to think about career identity as a reflective wayfinding process, and that technology can serve to broaden exposure and help students from marginalized backgrounds find the career paths that fit their aptitudes and preferences, while at the same time respecting their unique needs and experiences. Over the course of her PhD, she's collected so much data, run so many experiments, built dozens of prototypes, and conducted several workshops with young students, many of those processes she'll be describing today. She also has developed some technical contributions relating to the emerging field of synthetic data set creation, work that offers future designers and future researchers a path to support and serve vulnerable populations without surveillance and predatory research practices. I think we have several of our MDes students in the audience, and so we also wanted to speak to how Salena's work we believe to be the first that, as a PhD candidate, brought together Masters in Design students into her work. And that was such an impactful and amazing project, NorthStar, you'll hear about it in a moment, that we were awarded as the only Center for Design Higher Education Innovation by Design Award by Fast Company in the 2025 awards cycle. And we were the only school that were awarded outside of the student category. So just really remarkable work that we're about to see today.
So with that, let's welcome Salena to the stage. You've had enough of us. So Salena Burke.
Thank you. I would like to thank you guys for enduring me for 4 years. I would like to thank my family and friends, and to the people who are joining online. This milestone is yours. You guys are my village, and I just want to thank you for supporting me through this journey, because I'm always doing something, and this has been a long one, and so I really, really, really appreciate my village. So the title of my dissertation is Designing Career Identity in the Age of AI, Reflective and Identity-Sensitive Mediation for Marginalized Youth. The motivation to pursue a PhD the motivation to pursue a PhD stemmed from my young son, Kevin, who I am homeschooling. I began this journey with this broad idea that our learning environments are often designed using a one-size-fits-all model, and that young African Americans are disproportionately affected by that. However, a PhD journey, especially the program here at ID, provides the autonomy for research to shape your direction. And this allowed me to move from a broad goal of dismantling systems to focusing on what emerged from my research. And so over the next 40 minutes, I will walk you through how this research has evolved and shaped my work. The presentation is organized into 7 sections, beginning with the problem and the underlying fictions, followed by the methodological approach. I would then present my key findings from the studies I conducted and discuss the contribution and implication, include with time for discussion, and then I will debrief with my committee. And so, as I mentioned, I entered this program with the premise that one-size-fits-all learning approaches are not equitable for young African-American male. This perspective was shaped by multiple experiences. First, as a parent, I had to navigate an 8-year-old son who was constrained by the learning environments that he was in, and who, after I homeschooled, flourished. Secondly, I observed that African-American males are underrepresented in the corporate environments that I'm often in. And so my research ultimately led me to focus on the latter, which prompted me to explore issues related to career exposure. And for many students, career exposure begins at school through career guidance. And so research highlights the critical role of career counseling in bridging the gap between students' educational experiences and their access to career opportunities. And for many students, this gap is addressed through career guidance, where counselors really play a critical role in connecting educational experiences to potential career opportunities. And this is done through a variety of tasks such as assessments and planning and interviewing. The problem is that students move through school with the expectation that they will go to middle school, to high school, to trade school, college, or university. And this pathway is structured as a linear progression to a particular career. And this approach assumes that students are ready to define who they want to become. And the real challenge is not just access to pathways, it is how students develop a sense of career identity within them. And so I just kind of want to stop and state my positionality as a researcher and a technologist who designs systems for companies. And as an African American woman who, from my father to my youngest child, I have 4 brothers, 7 nephews, 1 great nephew, 2 sons, and 3 sons, and I run a non-for-profit organization that serves African American males. So what does that mean? I bring to this work a lived understanding of challenges that African American males face within institutional environments. And so through this research, I was constantly stepping back to ensure that my own perspectives were not influencing the research or shaping the findings, which I must say is hard, especially when you look at the data. And so students of color and those from low-income families are often shortchanged, face limited access to schools, or in some cases, have no counselors at schools. And so currently, there's about 17% of high schools serving approximately 643,000 students that do not have a school career counseling. And while student-to-counselor ratios have improved over time, as you can see on the left as it is narrowing down, they're still exceeding the American School Counselor Association recommendation of 250 to 1. And as a result, many of the students encounter gaps in support, alongside broader systemic challenges that shape the access to career guidance. And so technologists and designers really need to understand that marginalized students navigate career development within a broader set of systemic forces that shape access to opportunity. And these include social and economic barriers, racial barriers, unequal access to mentorship and quality education. And so together, these forces influences or shape what students are exposed to and what pathways appear available to them. And so this idea is shaped by scholars like Sean Harper, who critiques how education institutions often acknowledge racial disparities without naming racism. He argues that this race without racism approach normalized inequalities, focusing on students' deficits rather than examining institutional failures. Lance Billings builds on this here by arguing that systemic inequities require a deliberate pedagogical response. Her framework of cultural relevant pedagogy calls for education that supports academic success and affirms students' career identities. And so these scholars make clear that systemic forces shaping opportunities cannot be addressed through neutral or colorblind approaches. And so this is why a model designed to affirm students' identities while building critical awareness is needed. In addition to the systemic forces, youth access on hands-on learning opportunities that connect education to real-world employment are constrained by structural conditions. And these conditions define what is available and visible to students. And so this work builds off of Wick and others who show us that people do not make sense of their experiences in a vacuum. Organization and structural environments shape what information is available. Ruha Benjamin, she extends this further by, arguing that institutional and technological systems are not neutral. Through her concept of the new Jim Code, Benjamin shows that these systems systematically determine who is visible and whose opportunities are surfaced or suppressed, which is often along racial lines. So these scholars show that the structure constraints are not abstract. They are embedded in the very systems our students are interacting with on a daily basis. And this is a gap my work is designed to address by creating intentional pathways for career exposure where structural systems have created barriers. And so you ask, what is structural conditions? In my research, structural conditions refers to institutional and informational constraints that shape the environments in which learning and exploration and decision-making occur. And so these conditions influence what actions are possible or support for learners. So in response to these structural conditions, emergent AI supported career systems are positioned as solutions to address capacity constraints because they are able to scale, and so they can scale guidance through automation. And so how is this addressed? AI supported career systems are shaped by how guidance is defined. And so most of the time, this is defined as a process of survey, essays, and recommendation. And technology systems build on this framing. And so they operationalize it through recommendation engines. And the scoping guides people towards this optimal career outcome. And so these engines can scale. So while the recommendation student-to-counselor ratio is 250 to 1, technology can expand support to thousands of students simultaneously by helping move students through automations toward a predefined pathway. And so this is where we began to see the friction within this approach. So technology can be a effective response to structural conditions by expanding access and increasing the research of career guidance. And so this is done through scaling by reaching larger population, optimization by improving matching efficiencies, standardization by creating consistent framework, automation by streamlining guidance and process, and prediction by forecasting career fit. So while technology improves access and efficiency, it also introduces a tension between efficiency and decision-making and exploration and mean-making. And so this work is drawn off of Bauer, who argues that technology is often designed to scale access, right? Enable new forms of engagement, which can structure how learning is delivered. However, Noble offers a critical counterpoint. He's arguing that technology is not neutral, similar to Ruha Benjamin. He's arguing that the predictive systems embed structural biases that shapes what opportunities are made of, often reinforcing existing inequalities rather than disrupting them. And so together these perspectives reveal a tension in technology design. So, how should designers really be thinking about this? This leads me to my central question: how does career identity develop for marginalized youth? And so what is career identity? Career identity is referred to this work as how individuals interpret themselves in relation to work and future possibilities. And it is shaped by the social context in which these interpretations occur. And so I am borrowing from the definition of Mark Savakis. And so then my second question is, it builds on that. How can technology be designed to support this process? And so this leads me to my thesis statement, which is career identity for marginalized youth should be understood and designed as a reflective wayfinding process rather than a decision-making process. And technology can support this process only by expanding exposure to possibilities while preserving the learner's role in interpreting mean-making. And so borrowing from Marcus Savakis, career construction theory tell us that career identity is not something individuals just select. You just don't pick a career. It is something that's constructed through experience and reflection. This is important because while technology offers often focus on optimization and prediction outcomes, career identity development requires space for interpretation and exploration. And so my work looks at career development theories, and it's important to note that these theories have evolved significantly over time, from early matching approaches to interest-based alignment, like Holland, to more constructivist perspectives like career construction theory. And so while each of these contributions are important and provide an important insight, they largely share a common assumption that career identity is ultimately a decision to be made. So the limitation in this framing does not fully account for how career identity actually develops through experience and reflection and interpretation over time. And so this creates a gap between how career is modeled and how it is lived. And so career identity is not a one-time choice, but an ongoing process of wayfinding. And so you ask, what is wayfinding? Wayfinding is how people learn to navigate by exploring and interpreting and experiencing and adjusting their direction over time, not just choosing a path. And so if students are not ready to choose a path, then how should they learn to navigate? If wayfinding is how students are navigating, then reflection is how they make sense of that navigation. And so you ask, what is reflection? In this work, reflection refers to the process through which learners structure identity relevant meaning over time. And so if career identity is a learning process, then reflection is really that mechanism through which the learners become identity relevant. In my work, reflection acts as the central mechanism through which students make sense of who they are. And so as you see on the left-hand side of the diagram, students encounter emotions and ambiguity in new situations that are common in early exploration. And so reflection sits at the center where students are interpreting and making sense of their experience. And so through this process, experiences are transformed into outcomes, as seen on the right, such as identity, orientation, emerging narratives, and possible futures. And so the outer layer represents the broader context, the social, the cultural, the educational, and technological context, and that shapes the process. And so together, this model shows that reflection mediates how students move from uncertain experiences towards developing a sense of who they are and what is possible. And so while current system provides exposure and recommendations, they do not support the reflective process students need to make sense of their experiences. And so as a result, there is this misalignment between how career identity is developed and how technology is designed to support that development, which leads me to my primary question. How might a design-led approach reframe career identity as a process of wayfinding supported by reflective learning for marginalized youth? And so based on this primary question, 3 questions kind of navigate me through this dissertation. 1, how do adolescents engage in reflective sense-making within career-focused, design-based learning contexts? How can mediating technology structure career exposure while preserving agency, openness, and interpretive autonomy? And then what ethical and developmental and contextual constraints should guide the design of technologies that mediates career identity learning? And so as a point of reference, Weck explains that sense-making is not this passive process. And building on this here, Mills introduced a critical sense-making approach showing that the interpretive process is shaped by context and identity. And so as people make sense of their experiences, they are simultaneously shaping how they understand themselves and their roles they occupy. And so in the context of my study, I will show that as students engage in the design workshops, they are not just learning career skills. They are actively constructing their career identity through the process of making sense of their experiences. And so that brings me to the methodological section of my presentation. I am using research through design because it allows designers to use artifacts to create knowledge and create meaning over time, which is what I did with the 3 studies, one study informing the next. This work uses prototype-based research as a methodological strategy, and prototypes are not just solutions, they are research instruments. And this is important because career identity is not directly observable, right? And so design enables it to study career identity through the artifacts students create and interact with. And so over the three studies that I conducted, multiple design artifacts were used as mediating tools. These artifacts were used to analyze how career identity is formed. Artifacts are treated as data, not outputs. And this idea of using artifacts is drawn from Cresswell and others who argue that documents and visual materials are recognized as valid and meaningful sources of qualitative data within a mixed method approach. Filazzo supported this by arguing that how people interact with artifacts reveals not just behavior, but deeper layers of experiences and meaning. And so together, these frameworks justify examining what students created and how they engage with it as a window into their thinking and learning. And so this takes us to the finding of the studies that I conducted. And so the 3 research studies I conducted progress sequentially from isolating a primary mechanism, which is reflection through design, to examine technological mediation through structure exposure and interest fit, to articulating ethical and development constraints that must govern identity-sensitive systems. And so this cumulative progression reflects the dissertation's prototype-based approach to generating design knowledge, which each study builds conceptually and methodologically upon the previous one. And so study one addresses my research question of how adolescents engage in reflective sense-making within career-focused, design-based learning contexts. And so in this study, I worked with 10 students over 3 weeks in a participatory workshop. And reflection through design acted as the learning mechanism where students engaged with the experience while creating and discussing their ideas. And students participated in key structures, including creating a website. There were structured discussions and surveys. And so this study revealed that these types of educational experiences plays a significant role in helping students envision their future and begin identifying practical steps towards achieving who they are. And so this was the first one we did, and here is an example of like the websites that the kids actually created. They imagined themselves as business owners, which was really cool because these kids had already had some ideas. And so we built this online presence. And so the websites acted as a mediating artifact, showing how students explore and make sense of potential careers. And so what we see here is a shift in how students oriented themselves towards career, how they oriented themselves towards career. So initially, many students, they entered with skepticism and a sense of disconnection, which were shaped by external defined expectations. But through the workshop, particularly through the design activities, reflection and peer dialogue, this orientation began to kind of shift, as you see in the second learning conditions. And so students moved towards a greater agency and autonomy by developing the ability to kind of explore and interpret possibilities. And so what's really important here is that they develop early wayfinding skills, allowing them to imagine and move toward understanding that felt personally meaningful for them. And so using thematic analysis from surveys and discussion and observation, I developed the career identity through design reflection model, which has 4 key components: participatory design, continuous reflection, cultural representation, and collaborative dialogue. And so together these support students in exploring and building a sense of reflection, and with CIDR guiding the remaining studies. And so as a point of reflection, the CIDR model is not a theory, but it's a strong concept. Based on Christina Hook, strong concepts are not solutions. They are flexible foundations that can be adapted across contexts. And as Donald Shawn explains, design is a reflective process where ideas are continuously created, tested, and refined. And so CIDR is not a fixed system or a one-size-fits-all solution. Instead, it's positioned as an intermediate level knowledge of a flexible foundation of design prototypes that can be adapted across different educational settings. It can be extended by others to suit different needs, and students' exploration can be leveraged by using this here concept. And so CIDR embraces the reflection and iterative nature of design by encouraging students to generate tests and test their ideas about career identity. And so my second study was guided by the question of how can mediating technology structure career exposure while preserving agency, openness, and interpretive autonomy. And so you asked, what is mediating technology? So mediating technology really means that the technology guides and kind of shape or influence and shape and influence rather the making decisions for the users. And so for instance, technologies can decide you should be a doctor when it really should be saying, here are some different pathways or possibilities that you really need to explore. And so mediated exposures align with career construction theory by supporting identity construction through exploration and reflection rather than just kind of replacing it with predetermined outcomes. And so study 2 has 2 parts. In the first part, I work with 4 master's students. One is in the room. Hey, Faisal. And my faculty advisor, Zach Pino. And so over the 12 weeks, we designed a prototype that I call NorthStar. This process brought together different perspectives and ideas to shape the platform. And then in the second part of study 2, the prototype was used with students to see how it influenced the students as they explore different careers. And so the NorthStar prototype is built off of John Holland's theory, which explains how people choose careers based on their interests. And so it groups both people and careers into 6 types. And it helps people and individuals kind of find a match between the person and the environment. And so the 6 categories is realistic, investigating, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. And so Holland theory is important because it gives us a way to understand interest-based alignment. But when using systems, it can sometimes narrow what students are exposed to. So in my work, I use interest as a starting point, not an end point, to expand exploration rather than to constrain it. And so over the 12 weeks, we intentionally focused on the prototype design using kind of 4 key components. And so the first one, using AI prompt engineering, we took 900 career descriptions and they were rewritten using age-appropriate content and aligned with RASIC codes. This showed that inclusive UX is not automatic. It requires intentional design, especially in how language shapes understanding. This is one of my favorites. We did visual representation. It acts as a design mechanism that shapes possibility and expands how careers are imagined. So we generated 900 AI images reflective of African American males. And research shows that when students are able to see themselves in careers, they're more likely to see those paths for themselves. So this was really, really important in the research when we did this particular research. And then reverse engineering, we reverse engineered the system. We use the ONET model. And so if anybody's ever been unemployed before and you go to the Department of Labor, there's this survey process that you kind of go through, and it's built off of this ONET model. And that's what we use. And I took that model and we reverse engineered that and revealed how the algorithm kind of worked and where it fell short. And so the ONET model didn't account for careers where African American boys are underrepresented, right? And so showing the algorithmic neutrality can reinforce inequality. And this means systems must be intentionally designed to counterbalance that bias. So journaling with AI-guided reflection can capture how students' sense of identity evolved over time. And so part of the NorthStar is this journaling feature that allows kids to kind of talk and reflect on their experience, but then kind of being probed by AI. And so reflection becomes meaningful when it is structured through design. Design scaffolding, turning journaling into this identity work. And so the second study investigates the role of technology as a mediating artifact within career exploration. So this is 2B. And so using the design prototype NorthStar, we took the NorthStar, the game board that was designed, and then the research kind of examined how structure exposure to careers kind of informs students, and this was kind of grounded in that Holland theories. The game board structure kind of exploration, revealing how students navigate and evaluate career possibilities through interaction. So using the same kind of RASAC coding, and that's what the color codings kind of match, kids were able to kind of play this game and kind of use it as a way to kind of discuss careers in different pathways. NorthStar, and this is kind of the homepage for NorthStar, kind of structure career exposures to support exploration and interpretation. So this is another design artifact. And as my advisors mentioned, NorthStar was recognized in the Fast Company 2025 Innovation by Design Awards, contributing to ID's recognition in the data design category, the only design school honored outside of the students category. So 3 key outcomes emerged. So first, expanding exposure. The system introduced students to new careers that they had not been previously exposed to. Second, preserve agency. Students did not simply accept recommendations. A lot of the students was like, nope, you gave this recommendation. No, this is not what I want to do, and I'm adamant about that, right? And so that's cool because you're giving them the openness to reject what the technology is presenting to them. And so third is sustaining openness. And so students adapted and reinterpreted suggestions, keeping multiple possibilities open. So while they had not been exposed to to certain pathways, but now it's this opportunity to kind of now consider these possibilities. And so these findings show how that technology can be structured to allow kids to explore careers while still allowing students to maintain control over how they interpret and navigate their future. And so my last study was guided by this question: what ethical, developmental, and contextual constraints should guide the design of technologies that mediate career identity learning? And so this here was a 5-week study with 7 students, and multiple artifacts were used. And so this probably was my best workshop that I did of the 3. And so the study reveals how career identity draws on interconnecting resources, including motivation, resilience, social and spiritual meaning, and academic identity as developed through reflective activities. And so I'm going to kind of go through some of these design artifacts that we did. So the vision board externalized students' aspiration, making the image career identities visible. And so kids were able to kind of put that out and kind of explore with different identities, and it evolved. And so this board was a living vision board over the duration of the workshop, and they loved it. And like, we'll be doing something, they was like, no, can I do the vision board? No, we did that already, right? But they enjoyed kind of like thinking about and imagining themselves. The other one was the career timeline. Career timeline scaffold reflections enable students to kind of identify key moments that reveal their values and strengths. And so while this here was probably more emotional for me than it was for them, because kids kind of talked about their values, their strengths. And so in order to get strength, you have to go through things. And so this one was really emotional because I didn't realize what kids are going through. And so that's why resilience became one of the things, and they were open and they felt safe in the space, and they kind of, it was very interesting to kind of see the kids talk about their struggle. And it wasn't something that they were using as something as a weakness. When they talk about strength, they talked about, oh, I did, or I went through this, right? And so they were able to kind of recognize that. I'm a techie, so this is another one of my favorites. So this is the AI bot design activity, which provided insight into how students think about AI and how AI kind of should support the career exploration. And so across their design, students consistently describe AI as a guide, not a decision maker. They want a system that provides information, encouragement, and suggestions, while still allowing them to make the ultimate decision, right, or exploration. Students also emphasize important boundaries, right? So they expected AI to be respectful, to avoid judgment, and then provide honest but supportive feedback. And so we ended up coming up with this, I came up with these constraints based off their designs. And so what's important here is that students were clear. AI should support their thinking, but not take control over it. These expectations reinforce a key idea in this work. AI should function as a bounded mediator, expanding exposure and reflection while preserving students' agency. In other words, before AI can support career learning, it must respect the conditions under which identity is formed. So 5 themes consistently emerge across the participants: strength and self-efficacy, resilience and adaptability, interest and emergent passions, values and motivations was a big one, and competency and transferable skills. And so what's important is that these themes were stable over time and through the design activities, indicating that consistent patterns in how students made meaning of their experiences. And so these patterns provided the foundation for the analytical model in the last study. ensuring that the computational analysis was grounded in students' lived experience. So we did this computational model based off of these lived experience. And so then that leads me to the second part of study 3. And so the question here is how to represent patterns of meaning derived from small, context-specific qualitative data set without reducing the identity to fixed categories or predictive outcomes. And so one of the things about being at the Institute of Design and looking at things from a design perspective is that you're not looking at quantitative data, you're looking at qualitative data. And so while our data set, if you notice, was kind of small, but we were able to kind of, it was narrow but deep. We was able really to kind of get into what the kids were thinking and had that opportunity to provide that open space. And so in study 3B, I used principal component analysis, or PCA, as part of a reflective modeling bridge. And so PCA is a method that helps identity patterns in data by grouping related ideas together. So I applied it to the themes from the thematic analysis to find patterns across students' reflection. And so this allowed me to move from individual experiences to shared insights, really without losing the meaning of what happened behind the scene with the kids. And so in this way, reflection can be translated into a structural insight that supports more personalized and meaningful career exploration. And so there were four PCA components. And so while I did the thematic analysis that had 5 different themes, this here kind of looked at how does that, PCA looks at how do these themes play a part across all of the patterns, and we came up with 4, which is social and spiritual, motivation, resilience, and academic identities. And so these are my design constraints. So in this line, I show, you can barely kind of see it, but the idea is just for you to understand that I created synthetic data as a form of identity representation. And so the themes identified through the PCA were used to generate this data, allowing us to model patterns found in students' reflections. And so this is important because it let us represent different types of career identities in a structured way, especially when real-world data may be limited or underrepresented by certain groups. And so by using synthetic data, we can better kind of explore the patterns more inclusive, for more inclusive systems. And so this leads me to my implication section. These contributions shift how we think about career learning. So instead of seeing it as choosing a job, this work shows it as a process of developing identity through reflection and design experiences. And so there are 4 key contributions: conceptual contribution, where career identity is understood as a journey of figuring things out over time, not a one-time decision. Framework contribution, the CIDR model provides a structural way to support the process through design and reflection. And then methodological contribution, it shows how students' reflections can be translated into patterns that help us better understand identity. And then finally, design contribution, it introduced the idea that technology should be guiding exploration without taking control, and supporting students as they go through this process and gain agency. And so implications, these findings have implications across education, design, and technology. In education, career learning should be approached as an ongoing process of reflection, not a one-time decision. And this means embedding activities that help students interpret their experience over time. And then from a design perspective, learning environments should be intentionally structured to support meaning making, giving students opportunity to express and revisit and refine their ideas of who they are. And then for technology, particularly AI systems, this work suggests a shift toward treating AI as a bounded mediator, one that expands exposure and support while preserving students' agency. And so together, these implications point towards a more integrated approach to support career identity as a continuous, reflective process. And so this brings me to my discussion section. And so let's talk about this work. Yeah, I'm ready for questions.
Let's give a round of applause. So I think we are open for questions now.
Yes.
Yes. So we have our 2 mics. And then if someone, one of the PhD students, questions? Yes, raise your hands and.
Let me get me some water.
Right, well, thank you for that amazing job, amazing job. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And my question is, how did you choose like the participants for your research? And then also, kind of a 2-part question, like when we saw some of the like visual parts of like your research, so we saw like the vision boards, and then we saw I think like a game board, and then we saw like an AI. Was it like a controlled group of research participants that participated in each of your research?
No, so first question, the participants were, we actually went through the process of sending out information about the research and told, students that we were having this research, and then participants just signed up based on the flyers that kind of went out. And so it was not a control group. All the kids kind of, just so people understand, like sometimes when you do testing, you have this control group where people are doing one path, and then you have this other where they're not doing the same activity. And so all the kids kind of participated in all the workshops, and so all of them did the same thing. And then what I did from a design perspective is kind of look for patterns, right? And so qualitatively, I picked up this water, but why did I pick up this water, right? And so kind of look at that, and then see what was the patterns across all the students.
Thank you.
Carlos, go.
Oh God, I have 5 million questions. Is this on?
Yep, just speak up a little louder.
Okay. I just need to figure out how to make it short. Number 1 is, I know that I know you personally, so I know you have all these males in your family.
Yes.
Do you plan to open your program up to females? Because females can use this as well as males. I have females and males. And then my other question is, I guess the best way to put it, I have 2 granddaughters. One has finished undergrad, has no idea where she's going. One is going into college. Knows exactly what she wants to do. Knows how she wants to go about doing it. So not only is she going into college, she's got these top 10 schools offering her full scholarships.
Okay.
And so she's going into college. So I'm looking at a program such as this. How do you bring, or do you plan to introduce a program such as this to a high school where it becomes a high school curriculum? Because, it's not really career, it's wayfinding.
Yes.
So do you plan to bring a program such as this to high school so children will learn to find their way?
Yes, so to answer your question, and because you know me, the non-for-profit that I have caters to African American males, and part of the work, because I am surrounded by African American males, and so that struggle becomes mine. And so I kind of focus on African American males, but what we found out in the research that we did not have a lot of African American males participating in the research. And so across the 3 studies, we had males and females. And so while originally my motivation was African American males, they still was underrepresented in the research. And so hence the reason why I started using synthetic data to kind of model off of the African American males that I did have plus the females, right? And so I did have females into these 3 studies. But then to answer your question about the next plan after the PhD, so this is a conversation that I've been telling people, like, the work is not done. Like, the work is going to start today, right? And so right now, this program will be going through the Jerome Burke Foundation. And so we're going to integrate this here through the Jerome Burke Foundation. The Jerome Burke Foundation is currently now a CPS vendor, and so we're going to kind of go through those loops and then eventually kind of open that up to more African-American males, right? And I understand, and this is just a positionality for me, I can give you a laundry list of African-American female programs that's going on. And so I have this, and this is when I talk about my bias in the work, right? And so we're often seeing this great product or this great thing, and we're saying, oh, can we give it to? And I'm saying, nobody's paying attention to our boys. And so while it's a great, tool, and sometimes the foundation do things where we kind of open up. We had a career workshop actually here that was open up to girls and boys, but my main focus is on African American boys because I feel like that's a population that has been neglected, and no one's thinking about them. And so when I go into work environments and I am, whether it may be other African American women, I don't see African American males. And so what is the disconnect? What is going on? So how do I use this work to kind of help them navigate, and then once we kind of get those numbers balanced out, then we can reconsider and open it up to other people. But I really feel like that's a population that we have forgotten about, and I feel like my mission is to make those numbers even, and then we can kind of reconsider how do we open it up to other kids.
First, I'd like to say congratulations on such a great achievement.
Thank you.
Probably listening to your presentation, a few things came to mind. I think I heard you say 10 students work for 3 weeks across.
So it was, no, so one study had 10, one study had 7, and then one study, oh my God, 13. Oh, I hear you in the background. I'm like, what is the number?
What caught my interest the most was obviously. Did you help them process that to figure out where they fit for us to realize?
Speak up a little bit.
The Hollis theory. Did you help them through that process to figure out the career that may be best fit for them? And then I guess you're working with boys, but I see adult males who are stuck in that void. You go to their age, they're stuck, right? So I guess I'm wondering how if you help them process them, how so, and do you think, is it an age cutoff, right? For black males who just seem to have not figured out yet they're older, 20s and 30s, still trying to find their way.
Right.
So the house process to figure out where you belong.
Right, and so to answer your first question, we went over Holland theory in the last workshop, or actually the second one and the last one, and we kind of talked about Holland theories and what it means. The issue with Holland theory is that it's trying to find a fit, and we use it as a foundation to kind of explore careers, because we don't want to say it's a fit. I don't want you to do this survey and then now I give you an output of this is prescriptive, this is what you want to do. And so instead what it did was give them a subset of careers to say, hey, based on the information you provided, here are some careers that you explored. So how do you do that? And so what happens is that a lot of times that we kind of say, I want to do this here, but have you explored it? Have you explored other things? Because I'm homeschooled and I'm a mother, so I think I can do this here. My son, right now, you saw him taking pictures. He's a photographer. He's written a book. He's a writer, right? And so we're constantly putting him in different things so that, not so that he can say, I'm going to be a photographer, I'm going to be an author, so that he can explore these different things and then make an intelligent decision about what he should be going into, right? And so when I talked about that linear process of students kind of going through this, I did it in the very beginning where students are kind of going through this process of high school, trade school. The problem with that is that when you go through that process, you're actually saying, I want to go to this school, what is my major? Well, I went from high school to college. I have not had the opportunity to explore those things. And so while schools have an advantage, and you're right, saying like this is more of not, instead of a program, this is to be something in curriculum, where you're at a very early age exposing them through these design activities to kind of explore these different things, right? So how do you contextualize math? How do you contextualize all of these subjects? One of the studies, a boy said, I hate science. I said, okay, so what do you want to do for a living? He said, I want to be a barber. So let me break down all the science components that you need in order to be a barber. But if no one's contextualizing that information, all I know is I hate science. But now, after I said that, he was like, oh, well, no one's never said that. That's a problem, right? And so you do like science, or you might like science, but the way the information is presented to you in such a way that you're not able to correlate what you've been taught to what you may potentially want to do, right? And so that is a curriculum, as you said, issue, right? So how do we contextualize this here? So kids not in their senior year of high school is making a decision about what career I'm going into. This should be something early on where you're kind of exploring all these different things, and now you're being exposed, right? Because career identity is not in your senior year after you filled out a survey. It is this. It should be this process where you're kind of your career identity is developing over a period of time, right? And then so for the adults, well, now they're out of school. So how do you provide them that opportunity? How do you create spaces where they are able to explore different things? Because you don't want to still say, hey, well, you're an adult, you need to be in sales, and then you start doing sales and you don't like it, right? And so now you're back in this cycle, right? So how do we create spaces for adults and kids so that they can explore these different things and get away from, you need to make a decision. If you want to get accepted to whatever such school, you need to say what your major is, right? A lot of schools are doing general admission, but then once you do that, then you need to still reapply to a particular school, right? And so it becomes this thing of, we need to allow our kids and give them the autonomy to explore different things, right? But then we're talking about marginalized youth, where there's lack of resources. I started off with saying they don't even have career counselors, right? So now how do you take those environments for marginalized youth where we do not have resources and now provide more, we need more resources to provide a space so that you can kind of explore. We need curriculum development integrated into that. So how do we do that? And so this is a conversation. We are a community. And so this work, I don't have a solution. I have this work that I went through, and so I have a foundation. And so now we need to kind of go into the community and kind of work and say, how do we answer this here? Because for us, like for the study, it's a marginalized, it's our issue. It's our issue. And so how do we address that? So hopefully I answered your question.
So, through this study, did you see a great change in course with the students you work with from your start to the post?
So the 3 studies with 3 different sets of kids, but what I will say is I saw kids being exposed to careers that they had not otherwise been exposed to. I saw kids who, like the workshop, one of the girls was put in the program by her uncle, and she was like, I don't want to do this, I hate this here. And at the end, she was like, you coming back next summer, right? And so they end up because you have to provide that space. And so even some seniors that was in the course that had actually picked a major was saying, well, maybe I should do a minor in this, right? So now the objective was not to make a decision. The objective was to expose them so that they can start exploring, right? And so I met that objective. but now I need to take this work, and now how do you make it where it's applicable? Because, as I mentioned, career identity is not going to happen for that one-day workshop, that 5-week workshop, that 12-week workshop. It is something that happens over time. It should not be happening for high schoolers. We need to be kind of starting at an earlier age and kind of exposing them. Hello, son.
So it seems like I have a two-point question. Based on your research and based on your studies, when is, and it seems like you were touching base on it a little bit, but at what age and what age group should you start implementing it? When you take a student that's in the discovery aspect, or you're taking a child that's just playing in the sandbox, right, trying to figure out what they like and dislike, when does that student need to interact with this program? And then once they start interacting with this program, how often should they interact with this program? Because as you know, age and time, we change. So how much should I keep, let me go back to the program, let me play this game to figure out, is this still my path? So that's a two-point question.
Okay, so the first, I have not done any research on what age you should start, so I can't give you an answer on that. I would have to kind of go back and do some more research. The 3 workshops, we looked at students from age, it was 14 to 18 years old, and so that's the age group we kind of focus on. Based on what I've learned from this research, as early as they are starting to be able to be involved in any type of activities, right? And it can be, I feel like, even if there's that toddler who is playing around and role playing with different types of, I want to be a firefighter, I want to be this, right? Yes, students do actually evolve over time, and so it should be a continuous thing, which back to Tan's point is this may need to be something that's part of a curriculum on a district level, that you're always constantly going through this process of kind of revisiting, reinterpreting, evolving, because even with the vision board, and that with that short time, the kids was constantly taking stickers off, putting stuff on, changing based on the discussion that we were having, right? The one girl who was like, don't put nothing on here for technology, I don't have nothing to do with it, she started looking like, well, maybe, and then she started asking questions, right? So she started becoming interested in it, and that's what you want to do. It's not we need to get away from, you need to make a decision. When do I make a decision? It needs to be this evolving process that you kind of explore, and then hopefully through that process, you're able to say, now I'm going to go to college, and now I'm going to start taking more classes in this particular area.
Salena, I just wanted to say it's been wonderful to kind of see this journey, especially with Tony Bynum's class,
Yes.
Originally seeing that and where it's ended up, so fantastic work. So I had a question that kind of builds on this a little bit, but just some context. So I'm a product of the public education system up until ID. I went into the 3rd largest school district in the nation in Las Vegas, 49th in education, right? And oftentimes we can anticipate transitions with people going from, let's say, elementary to middle to high school, and then whatever pathway they take, trade school, community college, undergraduate, right? But where I've seen a lot of my peers, especially in an understaffed school district, really fall through the cracks was unanticipated events. Notably, I think for my younger siblings, the COVID pandemic, but also the recession for me personally, right? And so really, you can't really anticipate a lot of things that are outside of our control, right? But what the response was at my school district was to throw technology at kids, right? Especially when the supports underneath them, the foundations underneath them just fell out. And a lot of people ended up falling through the cracks. And my question is this is great that we can plan for anticipated transitions, but where do you really see this being applicable in those key moments, for those moments that you can't really plan for, right?
So, thank you for the question. During the summer workshop, and so as marginalized youth, and this is what I was talking about, like these systemic factors that kind of shape them, uncertainty is a daily thing, right? There's kids that came, they was late because they are the person that takes the kid to school, right? Or one girl came and she was crying because she didn't want to do anything because some issues that happened at home, right? And so unexpected for marginalized youth happens at a higher rate and often, right? And so this is where I'm saying journaling. And so, it's funny because the girl that was crying and I was trying to kind of maintain the classroom, I actually turned on some music and we kind of like, let's meditate for a second. And afterwards, it's about that transitioning, right? Because you can't change what was happening at home. But then it's this ongoing of reflection, right? And so during this workshop, the kids were constantly writing about how they feel. And so at the end of this workshop, and Zach is saying, okay, I need you to go through these journals and let's look at this data. A lot of the stories sometimes wasn't even about the career. It was about what was going on at home, right? And then if you look and as I was reading through them, I was like, wow, but you can kind of see that transition over the couple of weeks, right? And I don't know what had happened at home and how it resolved, but the person who was like, I'm just devastated at this point and it seemed really bad, and then over the couple of days you can kind of see that the journaling had kind of shifted, right? And so this is why reflection and revisiting over and over and over, even with saying, okay, I wanted to do this career and now I changed my mind. This unexpected thing has to be a thing of you're just kind of revisiting it over and shifting, right? And so that's why this wayfinding, kind of navigating the things as you get them. Exactly. Yep.
Okay, one last question.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then it also touched home to me because, I got a 20-year-old at home, and he also went through the same process. At Kenwood, we really have guidance from the counselor. And when he took the test, to place him in this one specific thing, that's what he went to school for. And it didn't turn out to be what he probably should have went to school for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did kind of like, check AI and gave the credentials, So my thing is for me not to repeat what I did with my oldest son, my younger son, how do we take your
Model.
and your information and be able to expand on it to see how we can help everybody, not just in one group of community, but like the CPS, like make your sample size a little bit bigger than what it is, right? Because we do need to a guidance, right?
Mm-hmm.
On how to do this. Now, can we come to your workshop? Like do a workshop, is this something that you're going to continue?
Yes.
I guess that's my question.
Yes. So yes. And so the CIDR model is a model framework that I'm going to be, again, this work doesn't stop. And so the CIDR model is something that I'm going to continue to build out. NorthStar is also continuously being built out. And so I'm going to be having workshops, kind of even with parents, because it becomes, the thing is that trying to integrate it into a school system takes a process, right? But then as a parent, what are some things that you can do? And so these are the kind of things that I'll be talking about, like how do you do it with your child, and then how do we kind of eventually scale up so we're looking at it at a district level, state level, country level, right? And so this is the process of what I plan on doing after this year. After I meet with my committee and they say, yay.
We'll see.
Bring the principal into it, possibly as something else.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. Yay.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks. Congratulations, Salena, for completion. There's a thread that is running through the questions which I want to address. I think a lot of people, when they think about a student getting a doctorate, they think about this as the end of the journey. And as our PhD director, Carlos, always points out, first day of the PhD program, the PhD is the beginning of the journey. It solidifies knowledge in a way that you can apply it in the field. So what we are expecting is that after this PhD, assuming the committee lets her graduate, she can then build on this work through activities, plans, interactions with CPS, other school districts. And also, I wanted to point out, while the research is about African American communities, it is the theory is applicable to marginalized youth of any race and ethnicity. So that's that's one thing to keep in mind, right? So it's not just African American males or African Americans. It's any marginalized community. So that's the idea of the PhD. So what's going to happen next is the committee is going to meet Salena.
And Faisal is going to give them the tour.
Okay. Salena is going to sit in front of the community for committee for an examination in which she will be asked questions about the work. This is a formal process. This is the final exam of the PhD that will determine if she can graduate this year or not. I keep saying that because it is in the hands of the committee. However, and the results of that will be announced at around 5 o'clock, and we will meet back in the green kitchen area to announce the results. And in the meantime, I urge the visitors to our beautiful home to walk around and check the space out. Faisal here, who was part of the team that built NorthStar, is happy to give you a tour. And then one request is you can take photographs of the building and of the work, but if you have to take photographs of the students, you have to ask for permission. So if they are doing any work or in the space, please ask for permission before you do that. And if Faisal's done before 5 o'clock, I also urge you to walk out on the campus. This campus, the IIT campus, is one of the most beautiful campuses in the country and home to the largest set of Mies van der Rohe buildings. Mies van der Rohe is the father of modernism. So, and also, as Zach points out, it is a nationally recognized arboretum. So you can actually see many species of trees. So we are going to take the examination right now. Please take a break. Come back at 5 o'clock when the committee can announce the results of the examination. Thank you, everybody. One more round of applause for Salena as we move on.